everyone in the Bar Business School and beyond. Today, we are navigating your brain in the jungle of business. Today, navigating us through examining your entrepreneurial brain is my guest and longtime friend, Suzen Fiskin. Suze, as I call her, Zen, as you may call her. Suze is an author, a speaker, a teller of tales that change lives, paradigm shifter, visionary, entrepreneurial coach and mentor, and above all, a terrific friend. So, Suze, share with us, why would entrepreneurs want to know about ADHD? Tell us what it means.
You know that I've got an ADHD wired brain, and the reason entrepreneurs want to know about this is because upwards of 85 to 90% of all entrepreneurs have this kind of brain wiring. And so it makes us different. It makes us independent. It makes us not want a boss, right? We don't do well when people tell us what to do.
Well, that's
We're
true.
innovative. We're creative. And we've spent most of us have spent our lives, unless we had fabulous supportive families, ostracized. You know, I used to work with executives, and I had a business called ADD-ish back around 2003. And I would be working with executives, and some of whom I would recognize as having an ADD-ish brain. And I'd go, well, did you ever think that maybe you're ADD? And it's like, no, I'm not that. Because that means in our society, you're broken. And so when I'd go, well, your desk is a mess, you procrastinate all the time, you're brilliant, you have solutions where people only see problems, you're gifted, and you're challenged in special ways. Maybe you are ADD-ish. And they'd laugh. And the moment they laughed and said, well, maybe I am-ish, then we could dig in and help them manage their brains that are very different.
So maybe they hated the name ADHD. And why is that a terrible name for brain wiring?
Because it's become synonymous with broken. It's the problem boy in class, right? That can't sit still, that causes trouble, that's throwing things across the room. But one of the interesting things is there are as many ADHD girls as there are boys. But the girls go inward. We're more inclined to become dreamy and spacey and disconnected. The boys are more inclined to act out. So, and it's a terrible name. You know, we don't have an attention deficit. We have an abundance of attention. We're paying attention to this and that and the other thing. And it's not a disorder. It's like a personality trait, right? See, I don't think ADD is broken. And society has labeled folks with this kind of, because we don't fit in. We don't sit down, shut up, and don't ask too many questions. We're like, well, what if we did it this way? And how about trying it out that way?
So, Suze, I may have told you this before, but I have friends who tell me I'm a variety junkie. I think that's another term for that. Maybe they're not calling me ADHD, but
Right.
I think there are people in the world who become an attorney or an accountant, and maybe they're satisfied with 40 years of doing the same thing.
Right.
Not me. I'm a
Me
variety
neither.
junkie. I accept myself.
And we're eclectic, right?
Yeah.
If you think of the people, like with most entrepreneurs, when they're focused on when we're focused on what we're focused on, there is anything but a deficit of attention. You know, when I'm on a project, after 12 hours, try to pull me away from it, right? It's like, no, 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 I have to finish. Well, we're eclectic. You know, it's like I'm a professional photographer and I've been a professional singer-songwriter, and I I do all kinds of things, as do my clients, right? We have wide variety of interests because what we have a deficit of is tolerance for boredom,
I love
right?
that.
That
Yeah.
is like our Achilles heel. Make me sit in boardroom meetings I want to, like the wolf, I want to chew off my foot, anything to get out.
Well, do you ever think it's funny they're called board rooms,
Yes. They just
right?
misspell it.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me, what's your favorite metaphor for ADHD and neuronormal brains?
Okay. I've got two straight away. The first one is, pardon me, that we have Ferrari brains with bicycle brakes. Right?
That's
We've
cool.
got these powerful brains that are capable of all kinds of things, but it's steering and braking that give us the challenge. And I think that starts to allow folks with this kind of wiring to recognize, wait, I have some phenomenal gifts as well as these challenges. And we'll get into some of the brain science.
What
But
does
my other favorite,
neuronormal mean? What does neuronormal mean?
neuronormal is, yeah, okay, I'll give you this other metaphor and it'll make it clear. Tom Hartman has written some excellent books on how to succeed with this kind of brain wiring. And he uses the metaphor, and I have saved marriages and lives, hunters and farmers. We live in a world of farmers. Slow and steady wins the race. Routine is embraced. They follow rules. They they maintain the current order. But then there are hunters, right? And in farmers, there's a time to plant and a time to reap, and there's structure and all of that that hunters find terribly confining. So hunters are in the moment. They're ultimately creative. If I've got dinner in my sight straight out ahead of me and a twig snaps behind me, if I don't turn around, if I'm not able to multitask, I could become dinner instead of getting dinner. And so we're fast, we're creative. What resources do I have right here? Think of a lion, right? Where they're sleeping and they wake up. I'm hungry. And they go out right away and they're in the moment and they're taking care of it and they do it and then they go back to sleep. They're resting so that we have peaks and valleys. Farmers tend to be, they've got their seasons, they know what to do, they've got delayed gratification. Timelines can be long and stretched out, and they don't get bored. Here's the key: those of us who are wired for entrepreneurship are fabulous on the front end. We don't mind wearing every hat that you have to wear. We're willing to work 40 hours a day. We're great at launching and getting new projects off the ground. That's what gets our juices flowing. What we're not so good at is maintaining and doing the day-to-day stuff that you got to do to make sure a business is successful. So ideally, you want to be the entrepreneur that starts a wonderful new adventure. And then when it starts to get to an even plane and things are kind of going smoothly, that's when you want to bring a farmer in to maintain it, right? The best partnerships are a hunter for all of the energy and excitement and the charisma that we're able to bring to the table, and then a farmer to maintain. And that's key because a lot of entrepreneurs don't want to let go of control of their business, but they run them into the ground because they don't do the day-to-day stuff you got to do to keep it going.
I love that. That's a great explanation. Okay. So, oh, and you know what you also reminded me of talking about that is that big companies are like cruise ships and entrepreneurs are like speedboats because cruise ships can't turn quickly, but entrepreneurs have that wonderful advantage that they can be variety junkies. They can shift course. You know, if the market isn't good for working with, I don't know, lawyers, then maybe you shift to accountants, like in the days when SOX was prevalent. You have to, as an entrepreneur, look at the trends and be ready to be a speedboat, right?
I liken it to being a cat who's fast on their feet and having a short tail, right? And your cruise ship and speedboats make perfect sense too, or it's the the school bus and the sports car.
Yeah, yeah, cool. So share some of the common gifts and challenges. This is
Ah,
really the meat of the ADHD brain, right?
okay. So people tend to focus on the challenges, right? Because we don't fit in. So the neuronormal brain are the farmers. They're the ones that our society, so that those of us with ADHD are hunters in a farmer's world. It's changing. You know, with e-commerce and everything going on with the internet, you got to be able to multitask. You've got to be able to respond quickly. That slow and steady pace doesn't work anymore. So some of the gifts, we're quick-witted, we're funny, we can be charismatic, we can see solutions where neuronormal folks only see problems. You know, we're the innovators. The world never changes at the hands of farmers. It's always, if you go through history, your recent history, your Bill Gates, your Steve Jobs, your Richard Branson's, and they rarely list women. When I looked famous people up with ADHD, there were like 3 actresses
Hmm.
and men of all ilk because we're underdiagnosed. So other gifts, creative, innovative. Challenges. There's and I'll go into this next about brain science, that we can lack executive functioning. You know, whether it's decision making, whether it's planning and organization, time management, they're not our long suits. Not that we can't learn them, but they don't come naturally. Misplacing things, losing things. I've come to accept things about myself. If I'm filling out a form online, odds are I'm going to have to go back 2, 3 times because there was an instruction I didn't read correctly. Dyslexia, eye tracking are common problems. Balance issues, not having great sense of physical balance.
Wow.
And there's a reason, because of the way our brain is wired. That is why I'm back interested in doing coaching of entrepreneurs again. There's been a ton of new research now that they can almost chart a thought going through your brain and seeing which parts of the brain get activated when you're going through certain processes.
So hold that thought about research because I'm going to ask you about that in more depth.
Okay.
So what are some best practices for entrepreneurs who have ADHD wiring? What would you suggest? What do they need to do or learn?
I think what would work well for timing here. Let's revisit that one after I talk about the brain research.
Okay,
Because once we understand how our brains are wired, then it becomes more logical as to the best practices.
perfect.
So what they've discovered is, and they don't know the whole picture, but that the cerebellum is called the mini brain. It's like a little two-lobed part of your brain at the base of your skull. And while it only takes up 10% of the geography of our brains, it's responsible for 90% of the activity. 90. So 10% geography, 90% of what's going on in your brain. And that's where we store what I call unconscious knowledge. Um, New information comes in through our prefrontal lobe. We then send it off to the cerebellum, assuming we've learned it. Well, the problem that ADDers have is that stuff comes in, but there's some gaps in the development of the cerebellum. So that what should be unconscious knowledge stays in our prefrontal cortex. So our prefrontal cortex is like RAM. Our cerebellum is like the hard drive. So we're storing too much in our RAM, which means not enough of it or not as much of it is free to be present and taking in information and sorting it. But there's really good news is that we can fill in the gaps of the cerebellum, that there are certain ways that have been found. Balance exercises, eye tracking exercises. And I've got resources that we can talk about at the end for people to develop. I've gotten huge shifts with my clients and myself doing some of these physical exercises, which you go, how the heck is that going to develop my brain? But it does. And so we can fill in the gaps. Dyslexia, dyspraxia. Dyspraxia is when people bump into things. These are some ways that we can know how we're wired. And when you understand that not only is this how you're wired, it used to be thought, well, your brain at 30, it's downhill from here. Nope,
Oops.
nope, 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 nope. From womb to tomb, our brain is evolving and developing. And there's some very special ways that we can explore that and expand our capacity so that not only will we have the innovation and the creativity and the charisma and the in the moment, we can also learn to develop some of the executive skills, the planning, the time organization. Can I talk to you a moment about time?
Oh, please.
Right? Anybody out in your audience ever procrastinate? Right? Those of us with ADHD brains procrastinate all the time. And it's really based on science. The science is we have a deficiency of dopamine. And so there are two times. There's now and not now. And so planning ahead and, well, I'll do a bit of this and a bit of that. I had a client that in college would do a whole semester's worth of research and then write his paper the last night. Why? Because the adrenaline of a tight deadline dumps a bunch of dopamine in our brains. And that allows us to focus and finally get the job done. Good news, we can probably do 10 times what a neuronormal person would do in the same space of time when we are hypercharged with that adrenaline and dopamine rush. So that, hey, this morning, I did a mind map of what I wanted to cover. I tried to do it yesterday, but I couldn't quite get myself to finish. But this morning, with like an hour to go, I was zooming.
And now you're zooming in a different way.
And now I'm zooming in a whole other mode. Let's see, anything that I've got here? No, so when you can understand that you can, up until 2 years ago, the information wasn't available for how to use your body and your mind in certain ways to fill in the gaps of the cerebellum. It's very exciting.
Wow.
Two psychiatrists that wrote a book called ADHD 2.0. They've been the go-to guys for over 20 years. They wrote Driven to Distraction, which was a totally gifts-based look at ADHD. They're two Harvard-trained and Harvard professors in psychiatry, and they both have ADHD. So they know it themselves, and they know it based upon the research. And so this is new stuff.
So, you've mentioned to me that you have some great resources.
I
So
do.
why don't you share them now? And then I'm going to ask you to kind of wrap it up with some final thoughts. So share the research we should know about.
Well, one would be there's a program called Zing Performance, and I can send a link. And I've done their program, and I'm going to go back and do it once school starts again. It's online. So what it is you do an assessment, and in that assessment, you come back with a score on 10 different items, 10 different assessment values. And it's different ways of thinking and whether your eyes track properly, it's on balance. And so you do a baseline of that. And then you go through their program. And the program is now online. It's been around for 20 odd years and helped hundreds of thousands of people, but it was based in the UK. And it's only in the past couple of years that they've expanded it to the US. Not that you couldn't log on online, but you wouldn't know about it. Great for anxiety, great for ADHD, great for dyslexia, dyspraxia, learning disabilities, all kinds of brain wiring issues. And so you wind up getting a series of 2 exercises per day that you do for 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening. And it's based on AI assessment. So at the end of each session, you mark how hard it was for you. And based upon that, they've got a criteria, 5 different criteria that you evaluate. Based upon that, the next day, you get a different set of exercises.
Wow.
And I have found, like, I did a trip a couple of months back. And normally with that last minute procrastination thing, I was a mad woman by the time I left. But I noticed I was like, calm. There was no craziness. I mean, when I was like in the car and driving going, that was easy. That was easy. My sense of balance has improved. So Hallowell and Rady, the ADHD 2.0, I highly recommend. The Zing Performance, I can send you a link that we can send off to folks. Embracing your gifts, you know, realizing, because society is so busy pointing out to us what we do wrong, right? We speak up. Sometimes we interrupt people because we have this flood of ideas that we just got to get out right now or else I'm going to forget. Accepting who you are. You know, I know that I have an inclination to be late. I know I'm going to misplace my keys or my phone or whatever it is. I know that there's certain hiccups I'm going to have in life. Okay, but what about the gifts? I wouldn't trade this brain for one that was like slow and steady. You know, it's very entertaining in here.
I used to have a friend who used to say that her brain was the worst neighborhood she was ever in. That was kind of funny.
And you may have that too because of your diversity. And parenting skills are really important because it is hereditary. In folks with this kind of brain wiring, there's usually at least one of the parents that is wired this way.
Huh.
And so to provide structure, to embrace the creativity, to parent well, and that's another area that I'll be glad to send some resources.
Wonderful.
That not only can you help yourself, you can help your children.
I love this. This has been wonderful. So, Suze, how can people contact you?
Well, they can email me at Zen, just like Zen Buddhism, at Fiskin, F like friend, I, and then the word skin, like the stuff on your body, Zen Fiskin at Gmail.
Wonderful. So thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And everyone, I'm Dr. Kumi Rachel Barr, and this is Navigating the Jungle of Business. I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks so much, Rumi.